I've had several questions about getting the mainspring back into this Uberti replica of the Remington New Model Army cap and ball revolver. And I need to do some work on the hammer. So I'm going to show you how I pull the mainspring, which I've shown in other videos, but also how I put it back on. So you start by removing the grip panels. If you didn't hear, this little pin fell out of the corner here. And then there's a screw on the front that tensions the mainspring. So we just want to back this off so that there's less tension on the mainspring. You don't need to totally remove it. And I don't know if you could see, but as that backed off, it eased the tension on the mainspring. Sorry, it's a little hard to film and show while doing it. And so you can see we've got that out. Actually, I think it's slightly tapered on the base to go in and out from the backside. We can go ahead and remove the cylinder as well at this point. Or we could have done it previously even. And as you can see, maybe, my hammer's actually scratching in several areas, and it's actually peened out on the hammer face. So our goal here is to actually pull the hammer completely out. And trigger assembly. Really, yeah. That's right, it's attached to the Pawl here, which is kind of a pain to put in, so I'm not regretting taking this job on. Okay, there it is. And there's the Pawl hand, and now the hammer will come out. So, if I can get this to focus. It's really difficult to see, but the hammer is peened over. You can kind of see that raise right there where the hammer's peened. And that's actually dragging when the hammer falls. And then you can see where the hammer's actually scratching the frame here. So we're just going to polish all this up and put a little bit of a taper there. So we're actually, this is a wet stone. I was running it dry. We're going to go ahead and run it wet. But first we're going to try to take that burr off with a file. So you can see with the file where Actually, we've cut that burr off slightly. Scratched up the rest of that. We'll do the same to the other side here. If I can manage it. You know, you would have expected that this hammer was hardened steel, but obviously this old file is cutting it. Okay. So that removes those two burrs. Then we're going to try to put just a little bit of a chamfer on here to prevent that from happening again. Okay, so now you can see there's a little bit of a chamfer. The bottom doesn't seem bad. And our whetstone has some water on it now. So that's taken the file marks pretty much off. Alright, so I polished through the 1,000, 4,000 grit stones, and really should probably polish more, but we're just going to go to the 8 and see if we can get this close enough. So this could obviously use more polishing, but we're going to call that good for now and clean up and reassemble it. Now, obviously, with all that water around, we want to oil things up really well. So, you can remember the order of doing this. Line up with this screw hole. Whoops, sorry. Line the Pawl back up, which is in my previous video. What I failed to show was how I get the mainspring back in. To me, this is actually the trickier part. we get the mainspring in. There we go. So you got to run something in there to get that pawl to line up and clear the edge there. Once the trigger return springs in, or once the trigger's in, you put the trigger return spring back. And now the trigger will actually function correctly, other than having the hammer missing. So press the hammer spring up in there, and then if you hold it, there's one wet direction that's slightly tapered in to go in, and if you hold the base against there and then spring the spring with a lever arm, you can just about get it started. You can get the spring started, and then once it's started, you hammer it in, and then do a function check on the firearm. So there's half cock, full cock, release. Trigger's right this time, so we can reassemble the rest of the firearm. There. Double check the function. Now, when I let this down, there is actually still a little bit of hang up right there. So there's a little bit of a burr in there. We'll take off with a file, I think. It's catching on the hammer as it falls. The hammer's actually not really well centered in there, and it's causing it to catch right there. And so it doesn't really seem to affect it when it's falling full speed, but when you set it down, you can feel it. So fortunately, I can reach in there with it assembled. I'm pretty sure that, or I'm going to have to pull it apart and shim the hammer some other day. But the primary purpose of this was to show you cleaning up the hammer and how to put that hammer spring back in that I glossed over in a previous video.